Good afternoon, Neil here with the Off the Lip Radio Show and the 831 with our esteemed guests. Congressman Jimmy Panetta is back on the show for the 6th time.
Is it 6?
Yeah.
Wow, I love it.
Sixth time. And we want to thank you so much for taking
keep coming back?
Because, I don't know, look what you got behind you.
Exactly.
Look at that backdrop.
It's awesome.
Handsome fella and an unbelievable
I don't know
backdrop.
about that.
And where's Lee? Lee's in the house tonight.
Lee's
Solomon's in the house.
Good to see him. He's doing
We've all got
great.
questions. We've all got questions, but I got
Lee
questions.
and Neil, thank you. Always good to be back in the boardroom, as they say, and good to be on the 831. So I appreciate this opportunity.
You're very welcome. This is a TC question, right?
Oh.
He goes, here we go.
Here we go. It's fair that he gets to do this from Oregon.
Please ask Jimmy if he thinks we will ever see Epstein files. And if we do, will they be compromised by Trump's Department of Justice?
Yeah. I mean, look, as I laugh because it's kind of laughable that you have such a hypocrisy going on with this administration when it comes to these types of files. Before, when it was politically convenient, he talked about how he could basically get the Epstein files out there, get them out.
Yeah.
And then now he's in the position to realize that, it may be a little more difficult to do based on the content.
As they say in England, a bit of a sticky wicket.
Absolutely. And so, look, first and foremost, let me make one thing clear. I'm for releasing all of the Epstein files. And what we have now, unfortunately, and on a lot of issues, is you have a President Trump, you have a Republican House and a Republican Senate, who, what we've seen over the last 9 months, unfortunately, have sort of caved to this administration.
Yeah.
And so they're not pushing this along. Fortunately, in the House of Representatives, there's this thing called the discharge petition.
Yeah.
What that means is that basically when you get 218, a majority of House members, to sign this petition, it's the bill itself skips the committees and goes right to the House floor for a vote.
Yeah.
We are at 217
Getting close
at this point. However, we have a member who just got sworn in a special election, a lady from Arizona named Adelita Grijalva. And she is waiting to get sworn in. She is waiting to get sworn in. But unfortunately, we haven't been back in session because of this shutdown, thanks to the Republican refusal to negotiate on the budget. So that being said, once we open up, once Adelita gets sworn in, she'll be 218. The discharge petition will be fulfilled, and then it will go to the House floor for a vote, and then we'll see what the Senate does over there. But like I said, I think this is a bipartisan issue, and that people want transparency.
Yeah.
They want to know exactly what the hell this guy did, as we should, and those files should be released. And so hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. Hopefully it happens a lot quicker than my answer.
Question number 2 from Mr. TC. Ask Jimmy about federal laws about banking and marijuana industry. Of course he's going to ask that, right? And if he has made any headway.
Yeah, you guys, I've been on this show 6 times.
And he keep bringing it up.
Now this is the 6th or the 7th. This is the 7th time you guys have asked me this.
Okay, skip that question.
No. Look, I think these are legitimate questions in the sense that we actually got very, very close last Congress.
Yeah.
We actually got very, very close because the bill that allowed for marijuana proceeds to be used, at least accepted by federally backed banks.
Yes, sir.
Got very, very close. Why? Because we put it into the National Defense Authorization Act, which is kind of how bills get passed. You take one bill and rather than pass it by itself, you shove it into a larger vehicle that prevents a lot of people from voting against it, and that's how you get it passed.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it passed in the House, but it got thrown out in the Senate.
Okay.
Unfortunately, now we're not seeing the momentum and the encouragement out of this White House, but hopefully this president comes around and hopefully we can do it. Like I've always said, the legalization of marijuana is like a giant battleship in which she is slowly turning, and I think we're about right here to get to right here.
Okay.
So it's getting there. It's getting close.
Okay.
It has a lot of supporters. I support it, and I think it's the right thing to do.
You got his support, TC. Lee Solomon here is the world famous Lee Solomon meteorologist, and he has he's got a question.
That's all right. Lee, it's typical that TC up in Oregon asks these types of questions.
Right? So my question is, with Santa Cruz getting as far as I know, all of its water from Loch Lomond. So we're sort of self-contained from the state, meaning we're not drawing water.
We, as I always say on the Central Coast, when it comes to our water, we sip it and we suck it and we save it.
We do, and we do a good
We
job.
save it up in Loch Lomond and those types of reservoirs, or we literally suck it out of the ground.
Right. So with all of the new housing, and everybody wants to get more housing.
Yeah.
Considering all of the housing that's been built downtown and what might be built in Capitola where the mall is, and what's happening even in the southern parts of our county, are there studies that are done as to how much water we have and how many folks we can service with that? Since it's limited, we can't just ask the state to pump us a little bit more.
Is that your question, or is it, it's a council member question?
It's a state and local
Okay.
question, but look, I think it's a very, very important question.
Yeah.
Don't get me
Is
wrong.
it a supervisor question?
I think supervisorial,
Okay.
city, but state as well. Look, I think when we talk about water resources on the Central Coast, obviously, a priority question because it's a priority issue when it comes to making sure not only do we have water, do we have room for new housing in order to have the water that supports it. And I think the answer is, obviously there are these studies that look into this, and we've seen them throughout our time, but I think the inevitable answer is, where can we get this water from? Obviously it needs to be more than just sucking and saving. And so we have to have more eggs in our basket, is what I say, in our resource basket. I was proud to get, I think, close to $30 million for the Monterey One Water Resource Recycling Project that takes existing water, runoff, and basically water that's been used and recycles it, cleans it up, injects it back into the ground, which then cleans it even further, and then basically we're able to use that and when we suck it out of our aquifers. But obviously that's something, and then here we have the SoCal Water District.
Yep.
They have a project that I was, again, able to get a few $1 million for to support that project that, once again, re-injects water into the ground, takes it out at a subsequent time. So these are the types of projects that we can be doing to ensure not only that we have water now, but in the future, because affordable housing and more housing is something that is needed here on the Central Coast. We don't want to price people out of this area. We want to make sure that our kids actually have the opportunity to come back in this area and enjoy this area like all of us do.
Sure.
So look, it's not just having affordable housing, it's having the water to it, but it's also the restrictions and the permitting at the local level. We have to do a better job streamlining that. And where the federal government comes into play for these types of projects is the power of the purse, the federal funding, like I've been able to get for Monterey One, for Soquel Creek, that I hope to continue to do if I'm in this position. Because that's kind of where the federal government has a lot of say, because locals don't want us telling them what type of water resources they can use or not use. And so once the locals agree to what type of project it is, then they come to us and say, we got this project, it's permitted, it's ready to go, we need federal funding for it, and that's where I step in.
So a follow-up to that is then the fires and not being able to get insurance for folks that want to rebuild. How does that work with federal, state governments?
Yeah.
And what kind of pressure and what options do they have?
Totally. You're hitting on a lot of state issues, which I appreciate, because these are important issues. They don't necessarily fall under my bailiwick, but obviously I'm hearing quite a bit when it comes to insurance and what some of these insurance companies are doing when they're literally just pulling stakes and leaving town and basically saying,
See ya.
we're not insuring you.
Yeah.
And so this is an issue that I know Ricardo Lara, the state insurance commissioner, is really getting an earful about. And he's trying to come up with ways in which we can make insurance more affordable. Whether or not we can do that at the federal level with something like the flood insurance program, which is ridiculously expensive, too expensive, but it is there, is once again going to take money. It's going to take money at the state level to bump up the FAIR plan. It's going to take money at the federal level.
It's going to take money.
If we actually have that. Now, right now, obviously, you see what we're dealing with at the federal government, the deficit at the state level. This is an issue that we now got to continue to talk about, and it's also basically making sure our private partners actually come into play as well, and making sure that the insurance companies step up and see what they can do. But the problem is, you go to the insurance companies, you say you got to provide the insurance, you know what they're going to do. They're just going to raise those rates.
That's right. Prop 50.
Yeah,
Want to wrap about that for a second?
absolutely.
Yes?
Absolutely.
I thought so.
Yeah, no,
Sure.
I
Okay.
am a yes. Look,
Yeah.
I think Prop 50 is very, very important in the sense that we have to fight fire with fire. We have extraordinary times going on wherein you have a president going into other states basically demanding that they bend the knee
Yeah.
and redistrict in order to get Republican districts right in the middle of a 10-year redistricting period.
Yeah.
California actually has to step up. Now look, this makes people uncomfortable, and I get it, especially in California. We are an independent redistricting commission state. I believe every state should be an IRC state. That's why I voted for the People Act, which mandates that every state have an IRC. Fortunately passed the House, unfortunately didn't pass the Senate.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, in California, since we're an IRC state, it makes us uncomfortable that we have to do this, but we're going to basically take this challenge on. And the way we took this challenge on by basically drawing these maps, which give us 5 more Democratic seats. It then
California.
It then strengthens 5 other seats that are already Democratic. It makes them more blue. So literally, like I said, this isn't a fight we wanted,
Yeah.
but we accept this fight because Trump in Texas started it. But also know that Prop 50 is targeted. What I mean by that is nearly 80% of the existing voters will have their same representative that they have now to vote on come November of 2026. It's temporary. These lines only last until the next census,
Yes,
and then the lines are redrawn again.
Yeah.
It upholds the Voting Rights Act, and unlike these other states,
Yes.
where the legislators are picking their voters,
Yeah.
the voters have the right to choose in this election their representatives.
Yeah.
So I'm a yes on Prop 50.
All right.
I think it's how we fight back. It's how we fight fire with fire. It's how we support and continue to strengthen our democracy.
Okay. Egley, you got a
Hi,
question. The Lithuanian has a question.
Yes, I'm a mother of 3 children, so
Yeah.
my question is regarding school safety and wellness. What specific policies are you advocating for the local or federal level to address the twin issues of physical school safety and student mental health?
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to mental health, especially youth mental health, we've seen a real injection of federal funds into the local programs. Once again, this is where, when it comes to what the federal government can do, it really is about the power of the purse, making sure the locals have these programs which they can use and inject into schools or inject into the communities. Where they get the funding is from the federal government. There were several bills, especially that stemmed out of COVID, especially what we saw, the impact on youth mental health from COVID. Basically, then we passed a number of bills that then actually got in and dealt with mental health in schools. Now, another thing we did when we were legislating, when we had members of Congress who actually understood what it meant to do our job, we actually passed the Safer Communities Act, which dealt with safety, gun safety, not just through red flag laws, but injected millions and millions of dollars into mental health services, into safety issues in our schools. So that was a bipartisan bill passed in 2022, I want to say. If you can believe it, we actually did something on trying to reduce gun violence. We actually did something on trying to increase safety in schools, and we actually did something on mental health.
Okie dokie. No Kings rally tomorrow.
That's right.
Are you part of it?
Absolutely.
Where are you
I'm
are you
gonna
showing up at?
I'm going to be at one that's in the Central Coast right now. For security purposes, I've been advised not to say anything at this point where
Yep.
I'm going to be.
I get it.
But I definitely will be there demonstrating that in this country we don't have kings, we don't have monarchs, we don't have a dictator. What we do have are the people, and that's our democracy. And so I look forward to supporting them as we continue to get out there and make sure our voices are heard, and how we feel about what our democracy entails, and how we feel about this president who is, although he wants to be a king,
Yeah.
we understand that democracy is not in D.C. right now. Democracy is here on the ground in the 19th Congressional District, and I look forward to being a part of it.
What do you think people are going to take away from it?
Oh, look, I think at this time, people got to realize that leadership is not coming from top down, that democracy is not coming from the top down. I believe that they're going to be energized seeing that democracy is from the bottom up. That's what we do here.
Do you think, is it going to divide people, do you think? Is it going to divide people, or is it going to inspire people and bring them together?
Oh, no, I think now we have to realize that we have to stand together.
Yeah.
And look, even I'm a proud Democrat.
Sure.
We need to realize that we need to stand together.
Yeah.
When we stand together, we're stronger. I've always said, and we have always said, basically, our diversity is our strength, but our power is in our unity. When we stand together, that's how we're strong. That's how we're going to be able to push back, and it's going to be a demonstration of what we can do, what we're going to see tomorrow, not just tomorrow,
but
what we're going to do on November 4th of this year, and what we're going to do in November of next year, 2026, when we take back the House of Representatives.
When leaders talk about calling up the Guard, where's the balance between keeping people safe and protecting their rights to speak out?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this is one of the issues with this president who is sending in these National Guard troops. And when he does that, it really is about retribution, it's about provocation, and it's about distraction.
Yeah.
It's about retribution because he wants to slam dunk on these Democratic mayors in these cities, even without an actual legal justification for it. But that's also why you're seeing the federal courts basically tell him not to do it and order him not to do it, and he's abiding by those orders. Number two, it's about provocation. He wants that scene of violence. He wants that image, not only because it helps him justify why he needs to send the troops in, but then it gives him that opportunity to basically see, they're violent. And then third, it's a distraction.
Yeah.
Look, this is a distraction from this administration's failed policies, right? It's a distraction from the shutdown. It's a distraction from what we're seeing when the OBBB cuts our health care and kicks the largest cut to Medicaid in our nation's history. This is all a distraction from these types of decisions that this administration is making. And so please know that there are reasons why this administration is sending in the troops. It's not to suppress the violence. It's to basically distract from all of the horrible decisions that they're making at a national level. Now, look, don't get me wrong. We know that there are certain areas that have crime.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I believe that we need to fund the police in order to do that. But we need to fund the police. We need to fund local level projects and police in order to have long-term solutions to that. Sending in the National Guard is only a short-term thing. And it doesn't really help, to be honest with you. As we saw in Los Angeles, as we're seeing in Washington, D.C., where literally I see National Guards, men and women, who are picking up trash, who are spreading mulch, who are taking selfies with tourists. You know how much money is being wasted by sending in those troops? Money that could go to long-term programs at the local level.
What, beyond protesting, writing letters and postcards, calling representatives, what is the most effective way for Americans to change the course of this presidency?
Look, I think what we saw back in Trump 1.0, that when we took back the House of Representatives in 2018, that really changed the course of the administration. I say that because it gave us agency. Right now, and trust me, I've heard it, and I get it, and I understand the frustration when people are out there saying, what are you doing, and how can I be a part of this? And it's like, I get it. And that's a difficult thing of being in the minority. We don't have the numbers to push back. We don't have the numbers to pass legislation. We don't have the numbers to give us agency. But as we saw back in 2018, once we gave Speaker Pelosi the gavel, man, that's when she was able to sit in that speaker's chair and tear up that speech. That's when she was able to go to the White House, chastise the president, walk out of the White House as a badass she is, and put her sunglasses on. That's when she was able to take that picture across from that cabinet table where she's going after the president. Look, it is about making sure we take back the House. It is about making sure that we have a Congress that actually understands its constitutional role under Article 1 to be that check and balance on this administration that we're supposed to be. We don't have that right now. That's why 2025, this November, Prop 50 is so important for California. That's why it's important for the rest of the United States to make sure we take back their House, live up to our constitutional authorities, and actually fulfill our job as the voice of the people. There's a reason why our founding fathers put Congress under Article 1 of the Constitution, because they wanted the people's voice to be heard through their representatives. Unfortunately, right now with Speaker Johnson, that's not being done. All we have in leadership in the House and in the Senate are people that cave and kowtow to this president. Let's make sure that people play their part in our democracy, not just through their freedom of speech, not just through their protesting, but actually vote. Do what we do
That's what you got to do.
As Democrats, what we do best as Americans, play a part in our democracy. The least we can do is ask you to vote.
You had a question about, remember, about the question about if Vice President took over, right? We had a question we didn't have the answer to.
What makes you think I'm going to ask?
Because you can pass. You can pass.
I try not to pass. I try to bullshit my way. No, I'm kidding.
I think a lot of people are wondering, both Republicans and Democrats, and we've seen hats that say Trump 2028.
Yeah.
It's a two-part question. One, can Trump stay on for a third term? And the second part is, if, let's say, J.D. Vance wins the election, and takes Donald Trump as his vice president, and then steps down for a reason, does Donald Trump become the president again, or does it skip and then go over him to somebody else?
I didn't understand the last part of your question. I understand the first part as to whether or not Trump can run again.
Trump can run, though, as a vice presidential candidate with J.D. Vance, potentially?
That I don't know. That's an excellent question. Whether or not he runs as a VP, something tells me that's limited, but I've never heard of that ever happening in our history. Have you?
No.
Then that's why I think the Constitution prevents that status. So, but I think that's something where you want to read the fine print in the Constitution under Article 2, what it says about that. I think she's got her phone out. I think if you Google it, the answer may come up, but something tells me there may be restrictions in Article 2. Look, your question is based on a sentiment that a lot of people are feeling these days. And that's, look, if this guy can send troops into the streets, if this guy can slap on tariffs, if this guy can sick the DOJ on his political enemies, if this guy can slice in half health care for people, this guy can make all these changes, what's going to prevent him from running again? Look, I think it will be a constitutional crisis if this president in any way screws with the federal elections. Because when he does that, he's got to go through Congress. And I do believe that you'll definitely see Democrats stand up, and there are actually a few Republicans that would stand up to him as well. And then you bring in the courts, as they have been the bulwark and will continue to be bulwark somewhat when it comes to pushing back on this administration. That is what I think they'll continue to do at this point. But like I said, if he chooses to do that, constitutional crisis, but more importantly, Congress gets involved, courts gets involved, and that's how we continue to push back and check this president as much as we can. We got an answer.
Looks like not. It's only twice, because twice.
Twice? As president and vice president?
They're not mentioned technically vice president, but no.
Yeah, it's something we got to look into.
Two questions.
Look into. I
two
think
more.
That's a great, excellent question, and I'm sure it's something that's been going out there online, and that what's going on with this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's something that we need to look into.
You served, which we thank you for, of course. So you know how much.
I didn't serve. I served in the Navy.
I think it's the Queen's English still.
I'm messing with you. I got to mess with you a little bit. You're messing with me. I'm messing with you a little bit.
No, yeah. Okay, what was I going to get to? Here we go. How much trust matters between the military and the public? What goes through your mind seeing the National Guard troops possibly face off with fellow Americans?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously the worry that we have, and I think the last thing that those National Guardsmen and women actually want to be put in that position.
Yeah.
That's not what they're trained for. They're not to come in and police. And first of all, they can't police unless there's an insurrection act that is invoked, and that hasn't happened yet. He's using all these other excuses. That's why the courts are limiting what these National Guardsmen and women are doing. If there is an insurrection or a rebellion or a situation at the local level in which the local authorities can't contain, then he deems it an insurrection act and invokes that, and then the National Guardsmen and women can come in and actually police. But if not, they can't police under the Posse Comitatus Act of the 1800s. That being said, Well, your question is understandable because I believe people. That's what he's doing. He's trying to send these troops in to intimidate people,
Yeah.
to capture that image of the violence that he says is the American carnage that this president talks about, at least in his first inauguration. I remember were the words he used. That's the scene he wants because that kind of helps him politically. But I also think when it comes to our men and women in uniform. Look, one of the more humiliating things I think was when the Secretary Hegseth and President Trump called in over 800 ranking military admirals and generals into that down at Quantico, Virginia, and also sergeant majors as well. Had them all come in from all around the world. A total waste of money. To basically, kind of give a political speech to them, unfortunately. So that was pretty disgusting. That was a waste of time.
Waste of money.
But it's a total waste of money. But let me tell you what gave me hope out of that. Is that when you saw them up there, you saw those generals, the most experienced military men and women in the history of the world.
Yeah.
They didn't take the bait.
Yeah.
They didn't bite.
Right.
They didn't clap.
No.
They didn't stand.
Right.
They didn't show emotions. And to me, that's what gives me hope. That even though they were there, captured by SecDef and the president and POTUS, they didn't respond. And to me, that gives me hope because it gets kind of back to your question of like, what happens when he uses the military? Because look, I believe that people like that understand when they take the oath. It's not to the president. It's not to a king. It's not to a monarch. It's to the Constitution. That's what we do when we take the oath. I take it. My colleagues take it. I took it in the military. Those generals took it, and they understand that, and they appreciate it. And so that's what gives me hope that if this president ever tried to use the military to do anything, like run again, like cancel the elections, and tried to use the military men and women to help him execute that sort of edict, they would stand up to that. Why? Because their oath is to the Constitution, not to the president.
Hallelujah. 2 questions. 1, 2. I said I lied. I said there was 2, and there's still 2. What was the first one? What was the question I was going to ask? I forget. What was the question? Oh, baseball?
Yeah.
Oh, I got a story about baseball. But my question to you is, what is your favorite Marianne's ice cream flavor?
Oh my goodness. Look, anything with caramel in it.
Have you been to Marianne's?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know, I haven't been in a while, unfortunately.
No, it's
Unfortunately. Yeah. But sometimes when I come home late at night from an event up here in Santa Cruz, I'll pull over and grab a quick little scoop on a sugar cone. But anything with caramel in it is my go-to.
Would you be our first guest once we get the 831 up and running, which it is, but our first standout guest? Would you mind if I gave you...
Absolutely.
Give Aaron a shout and have you come back on?
Make it happen. Look, I think that doing something like that is needed now more than ever because obviously, we're losing out on a lot of local press and, we know what's happening based on what's going on in social media. I think the more that you guys can give the voice of the people on the ground at a local level through 831, through the boardroom types of things, types of venues, more to you, and love to be support you and be a part of it any way I can.
Thank you very much. Congressman, thank you so much, sir.
Always. Thanks,
Always a
Neil.
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.